What is it that's holding you back, keeping you from becoming everything that God has created you to be, living your purpose and reaching your destiny? Is it self-doubt, feeling that you don't measure up to others? Perhaps it's fear or lack of resources, offenses and challenges, maybe even past or current circumstances. Well, I want you to know that these are pathologies, diseases of the mind that negatively impact how you think and perceive things that invade your everyday life. You can overcome these peculiarities and become conquerors, living in the purpose that God has for your life. The Bible in Philippians 4:13 teaches us, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Hello, I'm your coach Dee Johnson, and I'm going to share with you on how you can overcome these pathologies and be all that God created you to be on today's Watering the Seed. Hi, I'm your coach Dee Johnson, and today's subject is an often overlooked aspect of our lives and how you can begin to overcome them. This aspect is called generational pathologies. Other names used for this condition are dysfunctional families or generational curses. This condition that many often rooted in unresolved trauma and maladaptive coping mechanisms. To make it plain, it's the unhealthy ways in which we deal with unresolved trauma and how these unhealthy behaviors are passed down from generation to generation, becoming a part of our traditions. A quick footnote here, not dealing with the trauma can also be regarded as unhealthy behavior. Trauma, as defined, is an emotional response to several stressful or painful events that could be a one-time occurrence like an accident, a loss of a job, a death of a loved one, war, or a natural disaster. Or it can be an ongoing event such as neglect, physical or emotional abuse, experiencing or witnessing violence or crime, amongst other tragic events. Any of the negative impact on a person's life. And typically immediately following the event, shock and denial set in. When this happens, the trauma can affect a person's sense of self, their sense of safety, and the ability to regulate their own emotions. Painful memories and emotions, many times it goes unresolved. When this trauma goes unresolved, it can significantly impact our mental health and overall well being. These generational behaviors aren't rare and, in fact, may show up in various forms that many of us are familiar with, such as a deep seated bad habit like poor eating, excessive drinking, smoking, nail biting, anxiety, depression, and a bad attitude, amongst others, dysfunctional relationships, and even physical health issues that seem to cling stubborn family lines. Now, these behaviors, these bad habits, are called maladaptive coping mechanisms. And maladaptive coping mechanisms, as defined, are behaviors or thought patterns that people use to temporarily relieve stress or to escape emotions that they have a difficult time managing. People who have experienced trauma often use maladaptive coping mechanisms, such as substance abuse like alcohol, drugs, or food to numb their feelings. Other maladaptive coping mechanisms include avoidance, such as procrastination or denying that there's a problem, emotionally numbing themselves by shutting down their feelings to avoid the negative emotion, aggression, redirecting negative emotions by projecting anger onto others, and obsessive focus, obsessively focusing on negative thoughts or past experiences and running these things over and over in your mind. Some people overwork themselves by taking on excessive overtime, at their jobs or staying late in the office to avoid dealing with negative emotions. Excessive exercise is another mechanism, a maladaptive coping mechanism um, that they use, working out 2, 3 times a day. Money that was purposed for something that was more important, like their rent or mortgage, a car payment or a car repair, utility bills for them and their family's sustainability. Being on guard is another one. Being on guard all the time, another one. Being on guard all the time, watching out for danger. There are others, but these are the most common ones. These coping mechanisms may feel helpful at the moment, but are not good, especially as a long-term coping strategy. These behaviors want us from addressing the real trauma, and the unaddressed trauma under these false coping mechanisms worsens the original trauma. Then these false coping strategies are on to our children, which makes them generational. Have you ever found yourself or heard someone else saying things like, he or she's crazy, their whole family is like that? Or encountering someone who is always angry and defensive and wondering why they're this way? Do you know or have you ever seen a family of individuals who all appear to be overweight and even obese, and they justify it by saying, "Oh, we just love to eat. My whole family likes to eat." How about this one? You go in for a doctor's visit and they ask you questions like, do you have a family history of diabetes, heart disease, or cancer? Just to name a few. Well, these questions that are asked are to determine if you carry these health issues in your DNA gene pool. Your DNA gene pool, which is the carrier of your genetic information that defines your essential and individual characteristics or qualities. Some other familiar generational pathology may look or sound like his father was abusive to his mother and now he's abusive towards his wife or girlfriend. Her mother was a drug addict and now she's using drugs. Oh, you look like your mother, but you have a passive aggressive attitude like your father. If you've heard any of these sayings, I'm here to tell you they may very well be true because genes from your parents and even your grandparents and even generations before them. I like to watch this show. It's called Finding Your Roots. It's on public television, and where I live, that's Channel 11. They call it PBS. The show is hosted by Mr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., and in this show, Mr. Gates Jr. examines the DNA of American culture by reviewing the ancestral histories of his guests, who are usually celebrity guests. He traces their bloodlines to learn about connections to other celebrities or long-held beliefs. By doing this, many of his guests have learned why they made their career choices and why they may carry traits or certain habits, only to learn that the root cause was something that happened in their ancestry and still resonates with them in their own lives today. These traits or habits are pathologies passed down through their genetic DNA. Some pathologies are good, but those that are toxic behaviors can be a heavy burden in our lives. However, by understanding where these genetic patterns come from and how they affect us and our loved ones, we can begin to foster resilience, healing, and positive change within ourselves and our families. So awareness. The journey of overcoming generational pathologies begins with awareness. Recognizing the patterns that have persisted in our family is the first step towards change. It's about understanding the context in which these behaviors or conditions develop and acknowledge their impact on our lives. Now, There are many generational pathologies, but some of the most common ones are transgenerational trauma, substance abuse, mental health disorders, abusive behaviors, and health issues. I'm going to discuss each one of these briefly and maybe give you a little bit of some background or a story in my journey and in my experiences. Transgenerational trauma. This refers to the trauma that doesn't just affect the individual who experienced it, it also affects the future generations. Families with a history of trauma may continue to pass down maladaptive, dysfunctional coping strategies and very damaging, sometimes unsupported views of life that eventually lead to anxiety, depression, and mistrust. Some examples of this type of drama include systemic racism, traumatic and displacement through migration. Many are experiencing this right now in America as we undergo a great migration, as it is the recipient of hundreds, or we are recipients of hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers fleeing their home countries to avoid violence, persecution, and natural disasters. So, yeah, we're undergoing a great migration as I speak. And then lastly, the economic trauma of growing up in a financially unstable household. This can lead to bad habits of hoarding, reckless spending, or a hesitancy to spend money. This one reminds me of a story that a colleague shared with me once. He was an older gentleman in his 60s. His mother was still alive then. And he shared with me that his mother had a pantry in her basement filled with. I asked him why, and he explained that during the Great Depression of the 1930s, his parents had filled the pantry with canned goods to keep their family from starving. They never got over the impact of the economic downturn and therefore never got rid of the canned goods in fear that there might be another Great Depression. And although my colleague didn't have a pantry filled with old canned goods, he was a very frugal person, reluctant to spend money on himself. Um, and he drove an old car, depreciated value. And so, with that, this is a prime example of the transgenerational trauma that gets passed on that we experience, and perhaps it gets passed on to our children and then even their children. Another one is substance abuse. So, substance abuse, such as drugs, including prescription drugs, and alcohol can also be a generational pathology where children grow up in an environment where substance misuse is normalized, and this increases the likelihood of similar issues in a child's adult life. Um, I coached this young lady. She was about 22 years old, and we're just going to call her Fatima. Fatima was a 22-year-old nursing student, and she came to me because she was experiencing a lack of emotion after the past, a part of her daily life since childhood. Everyone in her family was grieving the loss of the grandfather, and although she loved him, she couldn't bring herself to shed a tear for him, and she wanted to know why. And so I explained to her that people grieve differently based on their relationship with the loved one and their understanding of death, amongst many other factors. At that moment, she then shared with me that as a child, her mom would leave her and her other siblings, one of them being a younger sister, at their grandparents. Those regular visits, her grandfather would touch her and her sister. When she shared the news with her mother about her now deceased father's molestation, on her and her sister, her mother's response was, "Oh, you need to get over that. It happened to me too, and I had to get over it." The mother was aware of the abuse her daughters were going through or could have been. She was subjecting them to, and she did nothing about it. Um, Fatima then went on to share a story about a recent visit to her grandfather's house before he had passed away, and how uncomfortable she felt during that visit. She said while she was there, she nonchalantly mentioned that her brother, who was 17 or 18 years old at the time, and her grandfather. When she said this to me, I was really thrown back. I thought to myself, did she just say her brother was getting high with their grandparents as if it was normal? And so I asked her, and she responded, yeah, is something wrong with it? On far longer than originally anticipated, as one would imagine. This is a prime example of how substance misuse was normalized and child abuse, sexual abuse, because she had been seeing this all of her life and it was their family's normal way of living. Not only that, the sexual abuse was normalized with the grandmother who allowed it to go on with her daughters. And now her mother who allowed it to happen to her and her sister. Her mother was with her, and so I advised her to seek immediate professional help and to encourage her family to do the same. I don't know the grandmother, never met her, but this story, it must be more to it. People, let me tell you, this is normal. And nothing about this story is normal. Not the drug abuse, not the sexual abuse, nothing about this story is normal. And let's just say this. I'm a life coach. I talk to people to empower them so that they may improve their lives and live it in a better way. Live it in a better way. If you are experiencing any kind of sexual abuse, substance misuse, gambling addictions, severe depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts, I urge you right now to stop listening and get help. Okay? Go and get help, please. I'll leave some information my comments section in case someone out there is experiencing any of these um, things, and please call and get professional help immediately. So mental health disorders. Let's talk about that. Mental health disorders such as anxiety and depression can have genetic components and be worsened by learned behaviors and influences within a family's dynamics. It can be passed down from generation, and affected parents are highly susceptible to these conditions. When a child is exposed to their parents' mental health issues, family stress, or trauma, it can impact them. They will begin to model their parents' behaviors and sometimes even absorb their parents' emotions. And this makes total sense because children learn behaviors and coping mechanisms mainly from their parents. So if the parent uses poor coping strategies to deal with their stresses and trauma, their children may adopt those same destructive behaviors or some similar, or even worse. This story reminds me, this segment reminds me of a story about this gentleman. His name was Michael. Michael was a retired Marine and he lived with depression. Michael has three sons, two of which were born, and Michael experienced his mother's deep rooted depression after his younger brother was murdered by a street gang. Michael watched his mother go through many emotions that caused him to absorb the trauma of not only the loss of his brother, but his mother's as well. His mother's as well. He fathered a child during that time, right shortly after that loss. Um, and after he enrolled in the Marines, he met and married his now ex-wife and fathered two more. Michael tried to commit suicide, but he sought help for this depression and is now living a healthier life, but constantly speaks about his depression around his sons. When he's experiencing a down day, he becomes downtrodden and withdrawn, and he has his sons wait on him hand and foot. His oldest son, now 19 years old, says he'll never leave his dad's side. He won't be going away to college this fall, and he doesn't want to be married. He's going to stay home and take care of his dad. This son has now started to exhibit the same behaviors as his dad, moping around, uh, withdrawal at times, procrastination has set in. He even exhibits poor hygiene. He even has moments where he just cries. And this is not healthy. And if you're experiencing these things, and if you know someone who's experiencing these things, again, I urge you to seek professional help immediately. When a family experiences such a great trauma as a murder loved one, especially a young person, it is crucial that the entire family seek professional counseling, both as individuals and collectively as a family. Requires an all-inclusive approach, including hereditary counseling. Now, abusive behaviors. Abusive behaviors, whether physical, emotional, or otherwise, can become a pattern within families, often because children learn from the example set by adults. If you've ever heard the saying, hurt people, this means that physically or emotionally traumatized people sometimes unknowingly project the pain or hurt they feel onto others. This is a maladaptive coping mechanism called aggression. And if you're experiencing aggression, seek help. Then we have health issues. Certain health issues, including some autoimmune disease and chronic illness, has been linked to the stress and effects of generational trauma, affecting family members across multiple generations. Excessive amounts of stress and trauma may cause one to misuse drugs, consume excessive amounts of alcohol, or become a smoker. And if they were already using these uh, coping mechanisms, they could get worse. Okay, these destructive habits contribute to autoimmune disease and chronic illness. This is just 5 maladaptive coping mechanisms that people use. There are others again, um, but I just wanted to focus on these 5 affect our culture and our society the most. Now, breaking these generational patterns, breaking the cycle, um, by addressing these pathologies, this often requires a combination of things, such as being aware that they're happening, Okay, being aware and then educating yourself and then seeking professional support. This is the way that you break these generational patterns. Breaking these patterns is sometimes challenging. In most cases, it is challenging, but doing the work for both the individual and the families. So let's go over some steps to help in this transformation process. So here are some steps to help in your transformation. Education. Education plays a pivotal role in this process. Learning about the root cause of these pathologies or biological, it equips you with the knowledge to tackle them head on. Acknowledge and understand the patterns that exist. This could involve reflecting on family history, behaviors, and experiences. Gaining an understanding as to why these patterns may have developed is crucial, because this will provide a background to help guide the approach in addressing patterns. And then seek knowledge. By educating yourself about the specific issues at hand, this could mean reading up on the subject, attending workshops that can provide insights into the nature of the problem you've uncovered and ways to overcome it. And then you have your support system. Support systems such as professionals like therapists and counselors can offer guidance tailored to your specific situation. So do take the time out to seek professional help. They can provide strategies and tools to help cope with and ultimately break these patterns. Be open about it. Open communication can foster an environment where open and honest communication is encouraged. A support group can provide a safe space to work through these issues. Also, consider discussing these issues with the family. This can be challenging, but is often necessary to address the underlying problems and begin your healing. My older sister and we talk about an unpleasant experience as young female children. Neither of us realized that the other remembered the event until I opened up to her about it, and she responded with, "Oh, you remember that?" This was the first step to our healing from that trauma. Um, Set clear boundaries. Setting clear boundaries is essential to your healing. By establishing clear boundaries, you set limits on bad behaviors that spread harmful patterns and protect your other family members. Start by telling your perpetrator, "I apologize if I led you to believe that this behavior was acceptable in the past, but I will no longer tolerate this from you." Be firm about it and stand strong in setting clear boundaries. Do not backpedal, because if you backpedal, they won't take you seriously. Okay? Practice some self-care. By taking care of your mental and physical health, participate in activities that promote well from stress, such as exercise, prayer, meditation, or hobbies. I myself like to sew and I like to draw. So to relieve stress, I engage in one of these hobbies. Be patient. Be patient and persistent. Change doesn't happen overnight. It requires time, patience, and consistent effort. Remember to celebrate small victories along the way. This is important. Even if it's just picking up the phone to make the call and hanging up. Okay? At least you picked up the phone. So congratulate yourself for picking up the phone and then tell yourself how proud you are because you did pick up that phone. And then do it again. And this time or next time, wait for an answer and then say hello. Stay committed to the process. Okay? And then celebrate every moment, every step towards, and then celebrate every moment, every step towards that healing process that you take is integral to your healing. And by taking these steps, you can work towards breaking the cycle of generational pathologies and lay the foundation for a healthier, happier family legacy. The most empowering aspect of overcoming generational pathologies is the realization that you have the power to change your story. It's about making conscious choices, seeking help when needed, and setting boundaries to prevent the spread of harmful cycles throughout you with the weight of your family's history. In essence, breaking free from generational pathologies is liberating. The process can be challenging, however, it will allow you to open doors that will not only transform you, but may even positively influence the future of your family and generations to come. It's about you creating a legacy of health, well-being, and conscious living that helps you to defy the odds and pave the way for a brighter future. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and healing. And until next time, I love you and be good.